We are live. We are live. Hi, everyone. I am Harper, and I am the CEO of Be Undefeated Therapeutic Solutions. And today we will be bringing a wonderful panel discussion entitled Melanin Mindset. And what exactly is that? For lack of better terms, it's just making sure that our blackness is really on our minds and it stays on our mind and making sure that we have it all intact. Today, with our panel discussion, we will be focusing on men's health. June is Men's Health Month. And so I thought it would be great for us to really just take some time and focus on that. We have so much that's going on in this world today, as always. This is nothing new for us, but we need to make sure that our men are healthy from head to toe. So today, I have four purpose-driven men, Black men, that are going to talk and share their experience. We're going to engage in some discussion, some dialogue about a variety of things, stemming from their spirituality, their physical health, their mental health, and mentorship, because that's something that we really need to be involved in, not only as Black men, but also as a culture. So I want to really bring forth that information to you all today. Um, and so the purpose of this is to dialogue and making sure we are staying in a preventative state of mind. Daily challenges divert our attention from self-care in a variety of ways. We are forced to position ourselves in autopilot, survival mode, and that can be dangerous. One may find themselves putting the critical steps of wellness to the side, ignoring real issues, or masking the situations in unhealthy ways. And we just see so much of that, and we need to really focus on not continuing to do that. And so, my hope today is that we connect or even perhaps reconnect in the holistic mindset and spiritual, mental, physical well being in our brothers' lives in order to mentor the younger generation the value of good, purpose driven, and intentional self awareness. And so I have four men. I'm waiting on one of them right now, but we're going to keep pushing forward. That I am going to introduce, and they're going to tell you little bit about themselves, as well as just welcome themselves to this panel discussion. So first up, we have Pastor Edward Thomas. Mr. Mr. is actually my cousin. I'm gonna put it out there. He's my cousin. And I love him to death. And he has a great background and information and work that he's doing. So, Edward, would you please join in and give us some good word?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I want to say thank you, Shayna, for having me on and being part of this great panel. I also want to get out the way. She told me that we all were in the same tribe. So, and we all knew a couple of the same three men. So, go mob to everybody that's on the panel. Glad to have and be in this great panel with Fred and Bruh on the blue and white. But here, we, like Shane said, we're family, we're cousins, first cousins. So we're really like siblings. She's my sister cousin. But my background is 24 years in ministry. Started preaching when I was 16. 13, the last 13 of the total of 24 have been spent in pastoral ministry. This is my second pastorate. Currently, I've been there 8 years in King's Temple Missionary Baptist Church as the senior pastor. Prior to that, 6 years in Batesville, Mississippi, as the senior pastor at a church called Concord Missionary Baptist Church. I'm a sixth generation preacher. So all my life I've been in the church and had various roles in the church, ministerial capacity, from associate minister, assistant pastor, youth pastor, you name it, I've pretty much done it. Currently, I am the founder and CEO of Weeping Prophet Ministries, and we seek to work in the community through family education, family development, community development. We also have in past times done such projects. After we rebranded, it was first the Nehemiah Project, but now Weeping Prophet. We've done school supply giveaways. We've been able to give out free of no charge to over 1,000 youth in our community, school uniforms and school supplies for about 4 years running. And so we're proud of that and looking to branch out and do more on the family, community, and family counseling side, as well as community and economic development side as well.
Okay. Very awesome. Very awesome. And we need to know about this. As well as I think it's okay to just be kind of secretive and such, but your work speaks for itself. And that's very, very important that you're in the community working. So very wonderful, very wonderful. Next up, we have Jared Washington. I actually sat in on a panel discussion that Jared was a part of about a couple of weeks ago, and I was very intrigued about his testimony of things that he talked about. And so, Jared, just introduce yourself and welcome yourself to the panel.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody is well, mentally, physically, emotionally. Again, I'm Jared Washington. I'm a licensed professional counselor based out of Atlanta, Georgia. I'm originally from New Jersey. Transitioned to Atlanta about 9 years ago. Currently, I work in private practice, and I'm also the CEO and founder of HOPE, which stands for Healing, Outreach, Purpose, and Impact. And pretty much what we do there is we engage or conduct speaking engagements surrounding the Black community, but through a mental health lens. As stated, I do private practice, but I'm a mental health therapist. So that's my specialty, but I'm also passionate about the community. So that's pretty much. Thanks for having me on the panel. I'm really excited to jump in on the discussion.
All right. Thank you so much. Um, Let me ask you this quick question before we continue. If there are some men that would like to seek your services, do you do anything as far as in Mississippi, any work?
Currently, I don't. I would have to get my license. I would have to get my license in Mississippi. I'm pretty sure there's a reciprocity process.
Mhm.
It might just take just applying and just waiting for it to hear back.
Okay.
But that's something that I could look into if there's.
Yeah, I think you probably need to work on that. All right. Next up, we have, I always call him Dr. Washington, Rodney Washington. He is a Renaissance man, as I like to think. He is very well versed in a lot of areas. So I'm going to allow him to share some of that information and welcome himself to the group.
Hello, Shana. It's always Rodney. So I appreciate the invitation and joining this conversation. I think it's timely and particularly worthwhile considering. Um, I'm Rodney Washington, born and raised in Mississippi. I am currently an associate professor in the Department of Population Health Science at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. But before that, I was spent nearly 20 years at Jackson State University in the Department of Elementary and Early Childhood Education. So my background is sort of a mixed bag. So I have, graduate degrees in criminology and justice services, along with clinical
Mhm.
mental health counseling and early childhood education. So I do a great deal of work with looking at health equity in high poverty communities, particularly in the Mississippi Delta area, under-resourced areas. And I have written and gotten funded several projects related to males of color. And when I speak of males of color, I mean all males of color, because I don't care for some of the distinctions that are made that differentiate males of color work from Black MSM work from other work. So I think that my background in corrections has also lent itself to how I see how programming should work, particularly how having uh, an approach that is driven by young people for young people And so, yeah, I'm a consultant. I run Consulting Plus. I've had Consulting Plus for more than 20 years now, which is my consulting business specializing in program evaluation, technical assistance, some grant writing, and just the gambit.
All right. Wonderful, wonderful work that you are doing and continuing to do. All right. We were waiting for our fourth panelist, Marcus Johnson, to enter. We're still working that out, so be patient with us. But we're going to go ahead and get this discussion started. So I just have some basic questions that I'm going to address to all of you all, and don't rush to answer so quick. But the first question is, what is your superpower as a Black man?
Oh, I think y'all just got that same smirk. I'm like superpower. Oh, I think, and I say for me, but I think Black men as well as people of color all kind of have a superpower of having to do multiple things at one time, and learning how to excel in each respective lane, and not while maintaining everything else you're doing. So if I had to pick one, the ability to multitask at a high level would be mine. Reaching out, I'm pastoring, but I'm a bivocational pastor, so I also work another full-time job. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm an uncle, I'm a mentor, I'm a basketball coach. So there's a lot of hats that I wear, and so my superpower would be just the ability to multitask and to function and be efficient and effective at a high level, not just having the hats, but actually making sure to be productive in each thing that we do.
So I'll jump in there and say I think that being a Black man in and of itself is a superpower. I think that I think that being able to navigate spaces that understanding, I think as a Black man, particularly nowadays, you have to be conscious of your surroundings, conscious of your conversations, of your interactions, reading the room, reading spaces, reading expressions, thinking in real time, weighing out outcomes when they appear, and particularly when you reach a certain level, when you look around and you're sometimes the only Black face in the room. I think that there's a lot to be said for that. There's some things we just do innately that that we've just learned to navigate, and it's just an important part of things that are spoken and unspoken, that we know that there are certain ground rules. And so I think being able to maneuver through all of these interactions is a superpower in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I had put my headphones in. But I think as a Black man, one of my superpowers I would say is my ability to empathize and my ability to be compassionate to people of all walks of life, right? I think there's a stigma that Black men really don't or can't show emotion, right? And my ability to empathize and also my ability to be vulnerable, with people, I think is one of my superpowers. But I also want to what Dr. Washington said, being able to navigate different spaces, I think is definitely a superpower of Black men, and definitely one of my superpowers as well. You gotta be able to, depending on your background, depending on where you're from, you gotta maybe be able to navigate in the corporate world and navigate if you're, back home, friends on, lack of better words, like on, just chilling with your homies, right? You got to be able to navigate those spaces, navigate, and you just got to navigate a lot of that really hit home for me when you said that. So yeah, I will also add that that's one of my superpowers as well.
All right. Wonderful answers. Wonderful answers. So how did you discover your purpose?
For me, if I it started career wise, right? So initially, I always knew that I wanted to help people in some capacity. I always been that type of person that wanted to give back or wanted to help the person that I see struggling. Because I came from struggle, so I wanted to be a teacher initially, and was going through the process of in college of applying for fellowships and applying for Teach for America. Not sure if you ever heard of that. Um, but applying for those things, it's funny because they actually were advertising for teachers to go to the Mississippi Delta at the time.
Hmm.
And that was like one of the biggest things. Like if you applied to go to Mississippi Delta, you probably was like a shoe in, like they were sending everybody there. But anyway, uh, yeah, wanted to be a teacher. Ended up in mental health, just doing a job, literally. One of my frat brothers put me onto a job. I was just doing it while I was in college on the weekends. Kind of fell in love with it. Moved to Atlanta, started working in a psych hospital. Ended up getting my master's, and I feel like, and when I say all this, I kind of was at times I was kind of resistant toward it and saying like, no, I don't kind of want to do mental health. I think I want to be a doctor, a medical doctor, or maybe again being a teacher, or maybe I want to do this, maybe I want to do that. But spiritually, I just kept being pushed
Hmm.
towards mental health, kept being towards doing therapy, because it was times where I had the opportunities, and I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do it. And but again, just kept being pushed straight, and that's when I realized, that's my, that's, and for me spiritually, that's what God wanted me to do or wants me to do, and so that's how I found out what my purpose was, and that's how I'm operating within my purpose today.
Awesome. Awesome.
Well, I think for me, I worked my way through graduate school in corrections, juvenile corrections, and I was a juvie officer on the night shift, and but did that for like 4.5 years, and really saw so many young people growing through the system. But I had a great deal of conversations. Just I was that officer that was like down the hall, sitting by the cell, like, why do you keep coming down here? Kind of conversations, and especially on the weekend when things were lax, a lot of conversations around real stories and real narratives around how young people get caught up
Hmm.
in systems that are not favoring to young children of color. And so that's when I, branched from corrections into correctional counseling, and saw a lot of programs out there, but I didn't think that programs really at the time were hitting those targets that were really holistic and approaching, what that young man needed. And it was just particularly disappointing to see young people who just in order to get out of the environment that they were in would just get in trouble and get incarcerated just to be isolated from their communities. And so you don't see that part on the news. You just see the blurbs and everything that's out there. And so there's just a lot of false narratives around, particularly young males of color, and all of these catchphrases that I just despise hearing, black on black crime and all of this stuff that, you know, um, doesn't help when you're trying to work with young people and understand situations that they're in. And so from that, I had a lot of people to believe in me. Had a lot of great, professors and family members and frats and sorors, who pushed me to be a little better because I saw myself in those situations. Who didn't have little scuffs in high school, but now these kids are going to jail for it,
Hmm.
you know. And so it's a totally different bag than to say what their high school or middle school experience looked like as opposed to mine, decades ago. So I wanted to get into program writing and understand a little bit better, how I could be a support and not just, join the same false narrative that was already out there.
Okay. Awesome.
Well, for me, I guess, and Shani, you know it more so. I think somebody would say I was born into it. It's in my blood, so to speak. My father, my grandfather, his father, two great uncles before them. We trace it back to like two years post the end of slavery that we can trace it back. So preaching has always kind of been in our family. Ministry wise, I never really saw myself doing pastoral work. Fact of the matter is, I tried to avoid that at all possible. And preaching too, because I've seen it. Growing up a PK, watching my father, who was my black hero, growing up and seeing everything. So I didn't really want to follow in that his footsteps or his path. But like Jared said, that spiritually, that's where the Lord took me. Like so, I started preaching at 16, and very quickly realized that I wasn't going to be like the normal young preacher that started just because of my heritage and my background, because of who my father was, because of all of the pastors and preachers that were around him. It afforded me a key to a door and a pathway that generally other young preachers my age didn't get. And so I was blessed to get opportunities at 16, 17, 18 in ministry that preachers who were 2 and 3 times my age didn't get, because of my father, and I stood on his shoulders, and because of the Dr. Jerry Youngs, and because of and all of those preachers that came before me. So at 16, I remember I hadn't been preaching six months, but I had preached in our state convention. By the time I was 18, I had preached on the state level, national level. So I was ascending quickly because of it, but that didn't really determine purpose. What really made me realize pastoring was my purpose. I think I was at my first church in year 4, really feeling like I was failing in ministry. Like I didn't feel like my father had died. I didn't feel like I was being productive. I was like, I gotta quit because I'm failing at it. I didn't feel like I was living up to the name of it. And I asked God to really take me out of it. So I was trying to do everything else to go find something else to do. And I started teaching. Teaching found me. I started teaching and coaching. But even in teaching and coaching, I found myself still filling that role in ministry. So it became ministry, teaching and leading people, young people. So shepherding people has always been what God has put me in that path to do. And so that's how I realized in that year 4 when I felt like, I don't want to do it, but this is what I'm called to do. And so I really had a conversation with God and was like, look, if this is what you want me to do, I need to know it, and I need to be able to be successful in it in a way that I know is only you can do. And he just started showing himself to me in various capacities, opening many doors. As Dr. Washington said, I'm a product of so many heads, hands, and hearts of people who encouraged me and just put me in right position, open doors along my life. And so the path was set for me to come into this place at this time.
All right. Awesome. All right. We're going to call in Marcus.
Okay.
And he is on the line. Hi, Marcus.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. Can you all hear? I'm trying to make sure if you all can.
Yes, I can hear him.
Okay, great.
Yes.
All right, Marcus, we've already started, but I want you to introduce yourself and just give a little bit of background about you.
Well, hi. I'm glad to be on. I'm Marcus Johnson. I am 16-year experience RN, been working mostly cardiac most of my career. I'm a member of New Hope Baptist Church. I'm a deacon in New Hope Baptist Church. I'm active in the church and in the community. I try to help mentor our youth, community gardens, and community service stuff like that. So that's me. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad I can finally get on and talk to you guys.
All right, awesome. We decided to go ahead and call you in because this is a new platform of trying to utilize this, so we want to make sure that we get it working. All right, Marcus, we've already addressed the question of what is your superpower as a Black man?
Well, considering that that we all work in environments where we're a lot of times only the Black person in the room, I think my superpower is honestly keeping my mouth shut sometimes when I want to say something I know it can't be said in that environment, but I can go talk to people one-on-one. I think I'm able to relate to people better one-on-one and get my point across as opposed to a large crowd. And usually when I talk to people one-on-one and relate to them one-on-one, I'm able to get to them and usually get them to see my perspective on any issue, mostly.
Okay, awesome. And how did you discover your purpose?
Well, honestly, I was kind of walking law school a long time. I always knew I wanted to help people. I was raised in the church, and my family was, our mantra is, helping other people who need to be helped. So I always knew I wanted to help other people, but I just didn't know how. And so when I got into nursing, it was fulfilling, doing that, helping people when they needed help the most. And, honestly, I really still wasn't feeling as fulfilled until I was actually a patient myself. I was diagnosed with cancer myself about 8 years ago. So being on the other side of the bed and seeing how the nurses and the doctors and the people in the hospital, it really helped. And it really, it's a ministry because people are at their lowest point in their lives, a lot of times when they're in the hospital. I mean, they have such bad thoughts. They have everything they're hearing is bad news. And, a reassuring person, a smiling face, a person that's actually trying to help them could, make a world of difference. So I discovered my purpose or new purpose about 8 years ago.
Okay. And I like to add for you all that it appears that you all went through some things. And I think that's a part of discovering your purpose. But you also have to remain open-minded to receiving that and knowing that it is what it is. That's a part of your life. And actually doing it, I mean, it's just a wonderful fulfillment to know that you're walking in your purpose. So I congratulate you all for discovering that and taking heed to it. The next question for the panel, what are some challenges you have faced as a Black man? I know that you all have talked about, at times you're just the only Black person in the room, and you've allowed or figured out how to navigate through that and make it work for your good. But what are some other additional challenges that you all are dealing with?
I'll start off then. I think for me and possibly the other panelists as well, coming into the issues of our own communities a lot of times because of our own internal insecurities. Being a professional Black male in our communities is not in different circles is looked at in different ways. And so the challenge of just being able to appreciate your own success and not feel guilty because you quote unquote good, or because you decided to go a different route, because you saw better and you were exposed to different things, you understood there was more to life. That doesn't mean that you were better than anybody else, but your life took a different path. And so one of the things is that internal struggle that I had to come to grips with of just really saying to myself, it's okay to do it differently. It's okay to blaze your trail and not feel like I owed anybody anything or explanation because of the path I took or because of who my father was or to even just and then because of it, some people felt like, you had an easy route. But I think anybody on this panel, anybody that has the blessing of having people that can get you in the door and speak for you will also tell you that so and so may have spoke up for me, but when I got in there, I had to stand on my own 2 feet. I still had to perform. I still had to earn my way. Yes, they gave me access, but when I got that access, it was up to me to do something with it, to quote unquote take the ball and run with it. And so for me, that was the struggle because of the success of my father and my grandfather and being in an area where people always knew them. I was expected to do it in a fashion that he do ministry in the way that he did it. And his ministry was different from my ministry. Our theology was the same, our DNA was the same, but God gave me a ministry that he didn't give to my father. And so I had to get comfortable with saying, yes, he's my father. Yes, he's my pastor, but I have a voice. God gave me something he didn't give to Carl. And so to be comfortable in my own skin and be comfortable with my own voice. And once I got comfortable with that and just trusted God to lead me, I felt the freedom that I hadn't felt prior to. And so that was it for me.
I think another issue that black men have to deal with, every day in the job, constantly having to reestablish yourself. I think, I can go, I'm established in my department that I'm in. The people know me and the people know how I'm working. They know, what I know. But if I go down the hall or if I have to go to a different department, you have to reestablish yourself because those other people who don't know you are going to look at you. You don't know if they're looking at you as just a new person, or they look at you as the black man and thinking a stereotype. So you have to constantly reestablish yourself because you don't know what these people are thinking. You don't know how they're viewing you. So you have to constantly be on your P's and Q's. You have to constantly be at your best, because you're not trying to fit those stereotypes. You're not trying to lose. You have to stay on top of the game. You have to stay abreast on everything, so because you constantly have to reestablish yourself.
Oh, I think no, you go, Dr. Washington. Sorry.
Jared, good. And it's Rodney. Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, I'll just say my mentor from graduate school, Dr. Williams, told me, like, pay your dues and nobody can take that away from you, right? And so that means, like, put in the work early on. I faced a lot of my challenges early on in my career as a 20-something, trying to navigate school and, parenting and all of that. And you have to do some real work on yourself. I did. Let me use I statement. I had to do some real work on myself and some self-discovery, learning to be gentle with myself, learning that it's okay to mess up as a 20-something-year-old. It is okay to make some bad decisions, whether it's professionally or what. You can still grow from them. And I think, at this point, I don't see challenges the same way. I don't owe anybody anything in a room. I could care less of how they see, how majority see the room and all of that. I'm done figuring all of that kind of stuff out. They need to figure out how I'm thinking at this point at my age, And so for me, it's like a totally different bag. I think there was an elder professor that told me before that had done like 38 years in higher ed, and she said aging is freedom because you really could care less the older you get. And I'm sort of on that wagon. That I love what I do. I hit the ground. It's a joy to be able to do the work that I want to do, and I've learned to understand that I can give myself time. I can take off. The world will keep turning. and you have to let work be work, and your wellness be your wellness in that process also. So I'm very intentional about how I handle me so I can show up better, in what I do.
Yeah. I think for me, if I had to think off the or yeah, think off the top of my head, I think a challenge for me, being a black man is kind of like the stereotypes, right? Or kind of, you got to work harder to be just as good, right? And I think that was one of the challenges for me because you may see others in positions and you're like, dang, I worked really hard just to be here, and I'm seeing others, you know, quote unquote, so they may not have worked as hard, but may be a little past where I'm at, and with a lot more help, right? And so, or privilege, I should say. And I think that was when I was younger. That was one of the a challenge for me, especially when I was in the trenches of trying to get the license and everything like that. That was a challenge, and also another challenge is being a black professional is depending on your background can be difficult as well. You may feel as though you have to fit into this role that may not necessarily be you, and may not necessarily be genuine to who you are. And I think that was a challenge as well. Transitioned into a more of a corporate type of role. It was definitely different and definitely challenging for me. So again, if I was to go off the top of my head, those would be two of the challenges that I think of.
Okay. All right. So this question goes to Pastor Thomas. How do you encourage Black men to take an interest in their spiritual well-being?
For me, I always take a not passive but a role of an observer first, um, because I just know coming at somebody talking about God, heaven, hell, spirituality, that can kind of be a kind of put off to people at times if you don't have that a type of relationship. So I seek to try to first and foremost have a relationship with individuals that I'm having that dialogue with. From time to time, it comes up in conversation because people know what I do. But my approach has always been to gauge where they are spiritually first, not from a judgmental standpoint. I think that's a put off, but more so to ask where they are. Ascertain what is your belief system? What do you believe? Acknowledging, even if it's not what I believe as a Christian, just everybody I talk to is not necessarily a Christian. I have some acquaintances that are Muslim. I have some acquaintances and coworkers that are atheists. So we do have dialogues, and sometimes those dialogues and conversations can be a little bit abrasive and a little bit confrontational, but we've always agreed to have a mutual respect. For me, the spiritual health of it is I share my faith. I don't demand that everybody believes what I believe. I offer it. I offer my faith. I'm my faith. I can be. I'm convinced and firm in what I believe. And just because you may believe different from what I believe, that doesn't mean it's going to affect me. So I'm secure in that fact, and so I share it freely because as a Christian, the Word of God commands me to offer Christ, and so I offer it. But I also share with them how it has benefited my life from a personal level. How I've gotten to this point at 41, and what as Dr. Washington said, where I'm at this point in my life is far different than in my early 30s and 20s. How I look at the world, my perspective of the world, and even Christ's role in my life at this point. And I have those conversations and just be honest and real about it. That I haven't always had, quote unquote, my stuff together. I made mistakes as a 20-year-old. I made mistakes as a teenager. Even now at 41, I've fallen. So how do you recover? Well, this is what I believe. This is what the Bible teaches me. So that's my spiritual health of understanding God is bigger than me, but He's always there with me to help me through it. But also understanding the spiritual aspect does not negate the help of medical. I think a lot of times in the church has given a stigma. There's a stigma to going to the doctor among people of color and minorities a lot of times, especially males. In my family, uh, my father died early because he had a fear of operations. That's just an honest thing. He knew he had blockage in his heart, but he didn't want to go have the surgery. So he suffered a massive coronary and died at 50 years of age. And so that's all because he was a man of faith, and he would tell me, whatever God sent me here and allowed me to be born with, that's what I'm gonna die with. I'm not gonna let anybody cut on me, and that's where he was. That was his position. But to for me, that's minimizing who God is, and the Bible teaches and shows me that there were many times that God used men to do His work as well, and so that's how I look at counselors and therapists. Yes, I believe in the Bible. But I also sometimes need to go talk to somebody who's been trained to help me navigate and walk through the things that's going through my mind, because everything that's in my mind is not John 3:16. You know, as a pastor, as a preacher, I'll be real honest. There are times as a black man I feel overwhelmed, and yes, I trust God, but I also need to be able to vent that in a safe environment. And sometimes you don't feel that around your peers or contemporaries, because they don't really understand that just being a man of God or a preacher does not negate one trials and tribulations and struggles in this world. So I have a pastor friend, Dr. Cedric Vaughn Jackson, who had some mental health issues, and proudly now puts that on display, but talks about it. And I have a great respect for him, because that's not a normal thing. Pastors suffer in silence. If you look at the number of preachers and pastors who have committed suicide, like that number is increasing daily, because it's a stressful thing we tend to internalize. And so, yes, spiritual health is important, but also mental health is important in that. We're spiritual beings, but God is concerned with the whole human, not just the spiritual aspect as well. So that's always been my approach.
That is strength in that truth that you just gave us. I mean, and that's the reality of it. And I just really hope that our men are correlating. When we're talking about holistic living, we're talking about the body as a whole. In my opinion, it starts with your spirituality, and then it trails to your mental. So the next question goes to Jared, and that is, how are you promoting men to take a closer look to understand mental health? And before you answer that, I also want to give you a question of, what's the difference between mental health and mental wellness and mental illness? Because all three are different. And so we
Yeah,
need to really shape that dialogue and that narrative of gaining clear understanding about the three differences in that.
yeah. Well, the differences is how I see it is mental illness is your for lack of better words, like your diagnosis, right? Meaning that maybe a diagnosis there or something is going on. I don't want to say that something is wrong, but something is going on that we may need to seek some help for. Now, mental health is I think is within the word, right? It's the health of our mentality, the health of our mind, and mental wellness is that maintaining of that. If I had to give my definitions, in my opinion, but how do I promote um, mental health amongst Black men? Was the question correct?
Yes.
Okay. Um, by just sharing my story, just discussing how important mental health is, as Pastor Thomas discussed. You know, our mental health is just as important as our spiritual health, and is just as important as even our physical health, right? Out the mind, I always say this, if I'm on a panel, or even if I'm just talking to somebody, I always say, without the mind, the body can't go, right? The mind is that engine. We need to tune it up sometimes, and that's okay. Really, just trying to break the stigma around therapy and counseling is the biggest key. Sharing with brothers that it's okay to be vulnerable, because for at times where we may not feel comfortable or feel like there is a space provided where we can be vulnerable, where we can express our emotions. And I always give clients this example of, when you're holding in all of those emotions, eventually it's going to come out, right? And I give the analogy of, when we have a soda bottle, a soda bottle, it's like shaking it up. When you open it, after shaking it up, it just explodes. And that's similar to how it is when we just stuff down our emotions. Eventually we'll explode. As opposed to expressing ourselves in a healthy way, a therapeutic way, it's like shaking that soda bottle up, but just easing the top off, where it just fizzles out, right? And so I try to give that analogy so people can understand, or so brothers can understand, that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to express emotions. We don't always have to show or engage with that hard exterior, or engage in always being on what's the word I'm looking for? Always being tough, or always being strong. We don't always have to engage in that. It's okay to be vulnerable, and I don't like to equate vulnerability with being weak. I think vulnerability is a natural human process, and so I think for us, for me, I have to explain that to our brothers, so that they can understand that treating our mental health, or treating our mental illnesses, and striving for mental wellness and mental health is extremely important. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome. I know that we just finished celebrating Juneteenth on yesterday, which, in my opinion, was probably the biggest acknowledgement of it across our country than I've ever seen before, which is a great thing. And but it forces me to go back, of course, on a daily basis, probably about history and where all of these things really started to brew and fester and just take a different shape. And so when I think about mental health in our Black men, and the thing about appearing tough, and it's okay to not cry because we shouldn't cry, stems back from the torture that occurred during slavery, the the taking away of not being with your family and being sold elsewhere, or just everything. You just really can't pinpoint one thing, but that in our DNA. And so now it's up to us, it's up to you all, and it's up to the village to help reshape that, because we can't continue making fun of our boys, saying that, toughen up, don't cry. It's okay. Like you said, Jared, that's a human thing that we have. We're all embedded with that. But we definitely need to address it in a healthier manner. And so, because I'm talking about the physical health as well, now this next question is to Marcus. What are some reasons men refuse to go to the doctor? I know Pastor Thomas talked about it, and it really touched my heart again about it, because that was my uncle. But that is the reality of what's happening. And so, what are some reasons men do refuse to go to the doctor?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you from my experience with, I work with a lot of cardiac patients. We have a lot of men coming in, and I tell you, first thing, we're just stubborn. I mean, we're just plain out stubborn. We don't want to, break our routine, because we like our routine. We like to do what we do, and we like to go where we like to go. We have a daily routine, what we do, where we go, where we eat, right? Going to the doctor, first of all, is a break in the daily routine. It's something different, and we don't like that break. Secondly, most people go to the doctor and think that they're going to be told something bad. We don't want to hear bad news. You know, a lot of times we'd rather just keep our head in the sand about whatever's going on with us until we just can't, you know. I know people have symptoms that, you know, like chest pain and stuff like that. They can know something's going on with their heart, and they'll ignore it for years until they just can't ignore it anymore. So people always ignore going to the doctor. And another thing is when we get older, men, we have some more invasive tests, you know, especially with the checking the glands, and we really avoid that like it's a plague. Having your prostate checked and, you know, colonoscopy, because, you know, we've always been taught that area is taboo. So we avoid, especially men, like I said, especially men, older men, 45 and older, who's supposed to get prostate checked and start getting colonoscopies, you know, around 50 or so. We don't want that to happen, so we just avoid the doctor.
Yeah, and that's tough. I know that I volunteered my services to go to appointments for men in my world because I want to make sure that they're going. I want to cheer them on as far as going to the doctor because it's important. And it may not necessarily just be bad news, such as even with heart issues. You might just have some heartburn, but you wouldn't know it if you don't go to the doctor. So I think that's important for females because I hope that I have some that's on this in this viewing this today. But it's up to us to really just cheerlead our men to go to the doctor and get checked out. And so, with that being said, Rodney, this question is for you. What do you think mentorship among our young boys and young men? Why do you think that's important?
Hmm. Okay, I'm going to hit that one, but I'm going to hit this last one like really quickly. Um, because I think that when we look at, you know, why some brothers don't go to the doctor, there's a lot going on there for certain. Like there's a history of mistrust that is valid
Yep.
with the medical community that is traceable and documented. And secondly, you also have situations where you can have access to care, but you don't have access to quality care, right? And so that bad news when you're already in a high poverty situation can be a huge bill that you're trying to finesse as well. And if you don't have proper coverage, or if you don't have the medical, you know, support assistance to pay those bills, all of those things can factor into why you would rather put off something like that and just not deal with it if you think that there's another way not to create another situation. So that would be on that one. The mentorship part I think is really important right now because our males were and I started drifting away from mentoring because I found in my experience with young people that mentorship comes across as perfectionist. There's a perfectionism attached to mentoring that I want to be like you because you do all things right, all things in order, and you know, and it's sort of a standard that young people may not think they can move toward. So my thing is just a support, however that support looks. But whatever that support looks like, I know that for young men of color, that is an intrusive situation. And I mean that it's not this, hey, how's everything going? It is an intrusive situation because oftentimes our young guys are experiencing trauma that they can't even verbalize. They're experiencing situations minds around, and then they've begun to normalize those things, and then so they've learned to move about in those toxic situations. And so it's not about their capacity to function most times in school settings. Poor performance in school settings is often an outcome of what they can't deal with personally. And so if you don't have someone to share those personal things with, that, as Brother Jared went about, that allows you to slowly release that energy instead of all of it popping out in a classroom setting because you've been triggered, then that leads to other kinds of situations. I've had young men, I've had to pay their phone bill, their cell phone bill. I've had young men that, you know, just needed, you know, support in terms of Where is, the STD clinic? But being open and honest, being able to have a conversation where somebody is not judging you and you're showing up authentically and allow them to be vulnerable in those situations is really where we have to be. Because whether we know it or not, we're modeling every day, whether we have direct contact with these guys or not. And so that's why I'm really intentional about what I put on my social media, and letting them see all facets of who I am. It's not just a suit and tie Rodney. It's a tennis guy. There's a run guy. There's a gym guy, and he has a regular life, and he just goes to work. I'm not doing anything extraordinary that you can't pull off yourself, but we're going to help you move to that. But we have to understand, as Brother Edward said, where you are now, so that we can fully unpack that and get you to your potential. So mentoring is an important piece, but I think unpacking that and operationalizing what mentoring means is being an intrusive support system with these young guys so that they have a safe space to be as vulnerable as possible to get to the real issues.
Yes, and I do believe that term support is so much more important because that's what we need. We need to get our village back intact. And to have that village back intact means we need to support, we need to love on each other, we need to not judge for even the simplest little things. Give great direction and helping and instilling the right truths. We need to really do that in our village. Um, I have a couple of questions from the chat, so I want to address that. Hi, Sister Alexander. Brenda Alexander has asked a question. How do you correlate mental and therapeutic solutions with biblical truths? I think we kind of touched on it a little bit, but the floor is open for anyone that wants to address that question.
Can you repeat it one more time?
Yes. How do you correlate mental and therapeutic solutions with biblical truths?
Well, if you look in the story of Elijah as he's come back, he just got through fighting with 400 prophets of Baal out on Mount Carmel. And it just won him against 400 other prophets, against this idol god. And Elijah says that his God is the true and living God. And so this spiritual war between Baal, the prophets of Baal, and Elijah ensues. Long story short, Elijah ends up winning the battle on the side of the Lord. But once you come out in the Bible after that story, the next thing you see of Elijah is in a cave hiding, because Jezebel told him, may the Lord kill her if she doesn't kill him like he just killed those 400 prophets of Baal. And this one man who slew 400 prophets and defeated 400 prophets is in a cave hiding, saying to God, I wish that you would have just taken my life and I want to die. Okay. So to me, that's him dealing with, and I'm not a counselor, but that's him dealing with depression. And so when I speak to you, I'm speaking to you as a pastor and addressing that. Pastoring and ministering has swings, and I got some pastor friends who's watching it, and it resonates with me of coming out of a place where you're the center of attention in the pulpit, in a room full of hundreds and thousands of people. And then when you come out, you feel like even though you're in a company of 1,000 people, you feel like you're all by yourself. And there's this great weight that comes and a feeling of isolation. And so that even Jesus himself would turn aside and leave the crowds because he was dealing with massive people, but he would have to get a break and turn aside and go talk to his Father. So the correlation biblically is that we need time of reflection. We need time of isolation where we can touch back base with that spiritual man, that man that needs to understand that there's something outside of himself, but what's inside of him is always a struggle. The Bible talks about warring between the flesh, the carnal man, and the spiritual man. And so that's that's a mental thing too. We're always battling. The Apostle Paul talks about when he says, I know the right thing to do. That's not what I'm going to do. I know what's wrong. And that's the very thing I'm going to do. Every time I desire to do good, evil is always present. So there's a conversation that's going on in his head. And in my mind, I picture him like that. If you remember those cartoons, I don't know if everybody watched Tom and Jerry, but when I was little, I watched Tom and Jerry. And Tom used to have the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder. And to me, that's that conversation you have in your mental, your ego, your self that you fought. If I remember in psychology, Jared. So we're always kind of having conversations in my head where I'm dealing with my spiritual side plus just Edward, the regular person. Rodney, you talked about in that mentorship of being perfect. I understand that because people have this thing where everybody else can make a mistake, but the preacher can't make a mistake. The pastor can't make a mistake. We're supposed to be superhuman. They'll say, well, yeah, but the fact of the matter is we're still flesh and blood. That's not justifying anything, but just understanding in our human, there is a spiritual and emotional struggle. For me, what brings it all into play is, as Isaiah says, I will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee because he trusteth in thee. So when I feel overwhelmed, I talk to the Lord. I pray. I read my Bible. But also, you know what I do? I go walk. That lowers my heart rate. I go out somewhere. I may go fishing. I may go just riding in the truck that allows me to decompress. I got to find something that's constructive so that I don't pop my top on that bottle because I don't let all that pressure that Jerry was talking about build up. Because when it blow up, I can't control it. So I don't go. When I'm mad and I just get in a rage, I'm not going to come quoting Bible verses. I might be saying I ain't no killer, but don't push me. You understand? So and people have to understand. They'll be like, well, I can't believe he a preacher. Yes, but I'm also flesh. Mm-hmm. I have my own limps and isms and insecurities and fears and all of those misgivings. And you have to find a balance. That's the word. The balance between what God has purposed you to do and still your human emotions.
Awesome. Anybody else want to chime in?
I'll chime in real quick. I feel like Pastor Thomas really answered the question fully and thoroughly. But one thing I did want to say is when I think about things biblically or spiritually, and when I get into conversations of when we're talking about mental health and Christianity, or just Christianity, but just spiritual things and religions and stuff like that, the one thing that always comes to my head is, they say without faith without works is dead, right?
Yes.
And so when I think about that, right, we can, like Pastor Thomas said, we can pray, we can talk to the Lord, but we also have to couple that with our own work, right? And so when you think about the question and it asks, how does mental health solutions correlate with biblical, we get the last word, but it correlates where we reach out spiritually, but we also reach out to mental health, and they can correlate by you maybe even finding like a spiritual they have licensed professional counselors who practice from a spiritual standpoint, mm-hmm. and so a physical standpoint where they incorporate spirituality within their practice. And so I think that's another place where it correlates, finding someone who can implement that into their practice as well. So I just wanted to give just that little tidbit.
Okay.
I think the two are. I think the two are. I don't know. For me, a lot of what is biblical is, I think, where it gets hung up is the interpretation
Hmm.
of biblical truth. I think that for me, if we talk about perfect peace and joy and those things, in order to get to those things, that it has to come anchored in your wellness. You know,
Absolutely.
your wellness is important. And how do you get to that wellness? I may get it from the Bible app. You know, some others may get it from a therapist, but that is individualized and it doesn't have to fit a certain mode. And so I agree with Brother Jared that I think that the two are correlated. I think one anchors, the spiritual portion anchors your Bible truths.
All right. All right. And I have two more questions from the panel or from the chat.
Miss
Oh,
Shayna,
yes.
before you get to that,
Mhm.
I something was in my mind too. I remember being in seminary, and one of the requirements when I was there at Reform was for all seminary students, master MDiv students, we had to also have a day where we went. You had so many hours where you had to go see the counselor. Okay, they mandated it wasn't optional. It was a mandate. Like you, if you're gonna be in this program, you have to one day a week go spend time with the counselor and have a session with the counselor. So what that said to me was they understood the pressures that came with ministry and with pastorally and just dealing and delving in that spiritual side. But I also wanted to share that it is imperative that when you immerse yourself in anything for elongated periods of time, too much of anything and being out of balance is dangerous. Okay, and so when you're so focused, and we're talking about the correlation, you can focus on just the spiritual side of it, and you miss the balance of. And I'm gonna talk me as a pastor. One of the things that contributed to my daddy's early demise was a generational curse, I believe, in that his father died at 46. Our grandfather died the same way my daddy died, doing the same thing. Okay, I'm talking about SV was pastoring 4 churches. He was an itinerant pastor. He was a farmer. He had 14 children. So he was doing revivals. He had been in revival like 2 months straight. Came home, got to arguing with one of the deacons early in the day, laid down, went to sleep, never woke up. My dad, fast forward at 50, same hectic schedule, doing everything, running all over the state. Family man, pastor. Got sick on the way home, master coronary, 50, dead. So what I had to say was, okay, what's the correlation? What's the connection? What's the parallel? What am I going to do different? Well, my daddy didn't express emotion. He was serious just like I was. I didn't even hear my father say to me the words "I love you" till I was 21. He just went to work. He paid the bills. He showed it, but there was never any emotional conversations. We just started having emotional conversations to 2 years before his death. So what it did for me as a man, and I had to go back and look at it, was I never learned how to be, as Jared said, emotionally vulnerable. I learned how to shut off my emotions. I learned how to keep things in and didn't understand till it started manifesting itself when I was in my late 30s, early 40s, where I thought I was having a heart attack, but I was just stressed out. I was burnt out. So now I got to reevaluate and say, okay, yes, I'm the pastor. Yes, I believe in God. Me going to this, talking to this therapist is not going to diminish the fact that I believe in God. But I got to talk to somebody. And I got to talk to somebody I can trust because you can't bear your burdens to everybody.
Mm. Mm.
So I just wanted to throw that in.
Okay. Great feedback. Great feedback. All right. I have two more questions from the chat, and I am going to just leave this open for anyone to chime in. Marcus, don't be afraid to chime in. And this comes from Sister Johnson. How do successful men of color remind younger generations to shoot for the stars while remembering who they are? And how important is reaching back into your community when working to reach your personal goals?
Say that one more time, Ken.
Yeah, do the first part again.
All right. How do successful men of color remind younger generations to shoot for the stars while remembering who they are?
Wow,
So,
remembering who they. Uh,
Well, I was going to say, excuse me, I was going to say, most of the time, we see in every other culture, successful men are usually reaching back. They're helping their friends' kids. They're helping people in their church, children, or people in their church around them. They help them. They reach back and help them, and that's what I think successful black people, like men, have to remember because we weren't always in these spaces. We weren't always in the position that a lot of our counterparts are in. So, we are doctors, we're lawyers, we're nurses, we're educators. We have positions, and we have this pedestal now. And when we look back at our youth, and we're in position now to, we can get them interns, we can get them, we can help guide them to the classes they need to take in college. We know these things now. We put ourselves in these positions to reach back. Now, our forefathers, our grandparents, our parents, some of our parents may not have had this position. They told us, go to school, work hard, get good grades, and get a good job. Mm-hmm. Now, we are doing that now, so we can reach back to our youth and tell them to go to school, work hard, and start your own business. And we have the contacts, we have the capital to help them do that. So they don't have to start from square one. They don't have to start from scratch. They have a foundation that they can build on, that they can surpass where we're going, where we are right now as a group of people. And that's what we need to be focused on with each generation, trying to help that generation see further than us. We stand on the shoulders of our parents and our grandparents, and we need to make sure that we're setting a firm foundation so that our kids and grandparents and our grandkids can stand on our shoulders and see farther than us. We started, right now, like I said, we are more professional as a people right now than we've ever been before. We've seen spaces when we've been in the presidency. We have CEOs, we have people in position. Now, what we have to focus on is cultivating our youth. We have to make sure that, because, a lot of youth, we can look back in our communities and, we can see some of the people we grew up with that may not have the opportunities that we had. Like, I grew up in, I had my mom and my dad, two-parent home. My dad had a good job, mom had a good job. And people that I grew up in the same neighborhood may not have had those same opportunities that I had. So we got to make sure that we are in a position where we can, where we are intentional about helping the next person come up behind us, setting them up so they can be successful and not have the same pitfalls that we had coming up.
Okay.
So Shane, I want to jump in here on this one because I'm really conscious about how we use words and how we unpack a word like success and what success looks like for folk. Success can look a lot of different ways, and it's not always corporate. And success is happening in communities, but we don't see it as success. There are folks that are working on the ground in their own communities, and it's not about who's outside of that reaching back into. It is about acknowledging the success that is happening. If we operationalize and unpack that term in a way that gives credit to that individual, because not every person, if we're looking at these employment hierarchies, there are successful guys that run lawn services. There are successful guys that run car repair, AC repair, their own business. And so I'm much like, for me, coming from parents that elementary education, neither one finished school, much like Brother Edward Stewart, my dad was a man of his time. I had to understand that he was not a person for emotion, but I had to understand that he came through an era that didn't allow him to be emotional, that he grew through an era that I can't fathom. And so success for me is being in a space that people are not in control of whether I have a job or not. You know, people, they didn't have that luxury. People could just send them home based on the color of their skin or deny them opportunities. And that still is happening. But I think that we have to start to understand how success looks, acknowledge the success that's happening within community by people that are just, if you're enjoying what you're doing every day, that that is success. And so I think it is about redefining that and not making that some standard that is only the doctors, the lawyers, and all of these folks. But success can look a lot of different ways to a lot of different folks.
Okay. All right. Jared had to leave, so we definitely appreciate him for being a part of this discussion. He does have a therapy session with cheering him on for that. Let me make sure, is he coming back or he's done? Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. He is gone. So we're gonna try to bring in Marcus. Marcus, are you ready to come on in? We're gonna try to bring you on in. I just sent them. Okay. So the second question, how important is reaching back into the community when working to reach your personal goals? And let me, before y'all answer that, I do see that you all are actually doing that in your respective fields, going out and doing community service, mentoring, and things of that nature. So if there's some additional things that you want to add to that, please feel free to chime in.
It's like talking
Ask
about
that
the work.
question.
Okay, both of you all will talk about. So I'm going to address the question again. How important is reaching back into your community when working to reach your personal goals?
Okay, well, I think your community played a substantial part in what shaped you as an individual. I know it did for me. And so that being said, I think it's important to reach back, to always reach back. But as Rodney says, how do you define success? I was a teacher for 13 years. I'm no longer in the classroom, but and I heard Marcus, I believe, talk about what his parents told him: go to school, get a good paying job. You know, that's success. But a lot of the kids in which I was teaching, they were struggling in high school. So it was very unlikely they were going to be academically successful in just going to a classroom setting. But they were real good with working with their hands, so going to get a skill in the trade. So I think being successful and reaching back and playing that part of the community is just meeting people where they are, but sharing your truth, not just your successes. For me, when I talk to young people and people my age as well, and they ask me, you know, where I am and how did I get there, I share more about my failures than my successes. You know, because my failures are what helped me learn and grow. You know, it's dangerous to look and just look at one part of a person, and to see me now is only part of me. But what did it take to get to this point? Because today's me is different from yesterday's me. Today's me, hopefully, prayerfully, has learned from the holes I fell in, learned from busting my head and scraping my knee, learn from missteps and mismanagement, you know. And so the failures are important, I believe, in helping folks in your community be successful and telling them, listen, these are the traps. And, you know, and everybody's story not going to be the same. The dishwasher is just as important as the CEO. So you know, communities are communities because it's not just made up of one person. My story is not going to make my story alone. Let me say it like that. is not going to make a successful community. But my story, coupled with Rodney's story and Marcus' story and your story and whoever else's story, is what makes a community. So the collective we helps the community be successful. And if we're working together for a common goal, I believe that's how we reach back. And all of us saying, all of us that quote unquote made it and saying, okay, let's go back and share our stories.
And I think the sharing of stories is so important. I was looking at Michelle Obama's Becoming, and that's something that I totally agree with her on. Is that, yeah, the statistics are important; those numbers are good to share, but it's the stories of the people that's a whole lot more vital. To hear someone's failures versus their successes, that reminds me of Michael Jordan and how many times he failed until he did have success. So we need to really look at those things, because success is a lot of different things. Success could be, okay, so everybody wants to be a Jay-Z now, but what about a Rodney Washington? Because he has his success story as well. So that is very, very important. Um, Anything else you all want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's important for me because I think back on things that I wish people had told me when I was younger. Uh, Even discussions around how to select a major. I do a lot of college and career readiness with high school students. I do a lot of programs in community because I believe community voice should be raised. One of the projects I'm on is with the city of Jackson, and they're doing a school readiness project. And we're allowing communities to define school readiness. We sometimes as educators think that our curriculum is going to be the solve all. That if you get this curriculum, kids are going to move singularly. A curriculum in and of itself is not the complete answer, but we're allowing parents to say, "This is what I need for my 3-year-old." And most times in some communities, it has nothing to do with curriculum. It's safety and security. I want a safe space for my child to go. First off, and so when we think about the medical side, the other projects I'm on is about telling young brothers where they can go, where they can get tested, and things like that. And so I think that there's just so many. It is about getting out there and doing the real work. I get annoyed seeing folk grab low hanging fruit. Students that are already intrinsically motivated to do more yell their mentoring and take a photo op and then take credit for something that kid was probably already in line to do. And so I think we have to be honest with ourselves. If we're going to do this work, then let's get out here and be serious about doing the work. And that has to come, with us understanding that there are challenges out there, but it's not an easy road when you're offering support. And so I think that for me is super important that it's not about me. I try to see myself in a lot of the young people I work with, but it is particularly it's about how best what I would have wanted for myself moving forward.
All right. And so our time is almost up, because I could stay here all day and talk and listen and learn. And so there's just a couple of other things I want to discuss. All of you are fathers, and this is Father's Day weekend. So happy Father's Day to you all. I want you to chime in a little bit about how fatherhood has been for you all.
Oh, fatherhood, it's been such a blessing. I mean, you talk about being forced to grow up. You live your whole life, and of course, like I said, I had a wonderful father, had a good role model to learn from. But it's way different from when you on that other end of the deal, and it forces you to grow up. It forces you to realize that you're no longer living for yourself anymore. You have a wife. Now you have another life that you're responsible for. You're there to protect that life and to nourish it, and to realize, and I never realized it at first how your children watch you. I mean, I could be doing the most mundane thing, and turn around. My son has both of his eyes. I mean, he's focused on whatever I'm doing. So, and that in turn forces me to live my life better for him, because I know he's watching. I know he's looking at how I treat his mom. I see him watching me, how I reacted with other men around the community. I see how you watch me when I'm with the other children, mentoring. So it forces you as a person, as a man, to grow up and to realize that your life is not your own anymore, and that you have to be an example. If you want your young life to grow up to be productive, you have to set that example. You have to live your life in a way that your son can emulate or your daughter can emulate. It can be a success also. So being a father is the best blessing I could ever ask for.
And I've observed Marcus, he is a pretty great guy as far as a father. Great job. Keep it up.
Well, full transparency for me. I'm a dad and a granddad, and so I had to plea bargain with my three grands to let me stay on this call and not disrupt it. Uh, and so I, as a father, I think I enjoy being a dad and a granddad, but I think I'm a much better granddad than I was as a dad, if I were honest. I was sort of building the plane as I was flying it, as a dad, and I think my patience is there. I have, stronger relationships with the kids and the grandkids at this point, but it's through a lot of trial and error because you learn a lot as you go, that maybe some things you picked up that you try not to do, you do differently, but you end up doing it anyway. But, it's a beautiful thing. It is.
Awesome, awesome. And you have three lovely, beautiful grandbabies.
Thank you.
Well, for me, most definitely, fatherhood is a blessing. Three daughters, one son. Um, they have all grown up watching me be a public figure, and so there's always a concern for me for them to view me in a lens not just as that public person, but to know me and see the real me. There's daddy the pastor and the preacher, and then there's just daddy the fella that helps me with my homework, give me driving lessons, takes me to the store. But my children, quite frankly, honestly, transparently, um, the Lord blessed me to where they were all born at critical points in my life. And so with each child was, the Lord gave them to me at a point where he needed to slow me down to kind of keep me from self-destructing.
Mm.
And so for my children, they're my lifeline. They're my lifesavers. They give me something to focus on outside of myself and whatever. And then that's my motivation, and they're what keeps me going. You know, my youngest and my oldest are born on the same day. Just one is 22, the other is 13. So and those things. So it's a great dichotomy. It's a great picture, but they just keep me grounded. No matter how important I get to somebody else, I'm just dead, and they don't never let me forget that. And they joke about that. What they say, but Dad, I don't want to talk to the pastor. I just want to talk to my dad. And so they just do a great job of keeping you grounded and keeping you focused on what's really important in life.
All right, awesome. So, in closing, I want to thank you all again for giving of yourselves and sharing your time. Please thank your families for allowing you to participate in this discussion because I feel that it was very vital to have. And this is the first of many because we not only need to dialogue, but we need to do some action planning steps next about some of the things that's going on in our communities. So this final question, you all can keep it short in closing and give your final remarks. I want to challenge you with this thought. If you had one opportunity to make a change in the world with all the tools and resources, what would you do?
Well, I start off. If it was up to me, I would. It is one of the things I kind of harp on a lot, but I wanted to get back to focus on the Black family. I want to get back and focus on the Black family unit because a lot of our ills we're having with our children can be traced back to the home, to their own lives. I want to get back to an active father, an active mother, and they're playing an active role in their child's life. I think if we can get back to that, we can cure a lot of the ills that's plaguing our community today, and that would help, of course, our community as a whole.
I'll just say briefly that I would create opportunities, equal opportunities, and opportunities that are equitable is what I would do, because people are functioning from a deficit that forces that functioning under systems that allow you to withdraw, that allow you to shut down, that allow you not to engage. And so I think that closing this opportunity gap is what I think is what I see as essential.
Very quickly, love people more. I know that kind of sounds kind of iffy, but when I look at our world today, the coldness of our world, we're devoid of just love for humanity. We don't seek to understand or empathize because we focus on how we're different in so many respects, and so that divides us. So loving people more, being more compassionate, forgiving, showing more mercy, showing more grace.
And that, my friends, is the bottom line, in the words of the late Frank Milton. I thank you all so much for this opportunity. And I would like to apologize for any of the lagging that occurred during this viewing of this. We're going to work all those kinks out. So please be on the lookout for our next panel discussion, which is going to be a little bit different. This is going to involve children. And so I think that's going to be very exciting, and just get their viewpoint about what's going on in this world today. Just have them talk and dialogue. So I appreciate you all. You all have a wonderful, blessed Saturday, and happy Father's Day to you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
I appreciate that.
Bye.
Bye.
You have to finish. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Hi, we are live. We are live. Hi, everyone. I am Harper, and